Hello YouTube, this is Chris, Kerbal Space Program, calling this Hardmode Deluxe. I haven't done a video for a while for Kerbal Space Program that I've actually new recordings. I did post a couple things that I've had hanging around. One was a surface to a single stage to takeoff jet, and then there was another one. It was a fusion rocket jet that was using the Interstellar Mod Pack, one of the engines in that, and it was successful. But I am back now with a new setup. I went back to vanilla, and then I've been adding mods back in as I see fit, and also as they are stable. So with this new career mode, we basically just start with a couple stupid steps here, where we use the pod to get some initial science, and then start working our way up towards more scientific parts and more scope of larger mission scopes. And I'll just go through real quick. We'll set up some simple rockets and do the science on them, and then garner the points and put them towards more parts or more research. And one of the things you can do is you can actually get surface samples from the actual landing pad itself or launch pad, as well as the ground around it. And for some reason I selected to plant a flag here, which I didn't want to do. I just clicked the wrong button, and I decided I would go with it anyway. Flags are cool, and Kerbals like flags, and it just seemed like the right thing to do at the time. As you can see here, after a couple missions, I'm still only just opening up to the, I guess we would call the third tier, but it was the second researchable tier of research. And I went with, I kind of focused on the tanks itself. This is a new take on things, and I decided to try something a little bit different. I will, obviously furthering your science, getting more science parts with the research is the way to go to get more research opened up sooner. But I guess I just wanted to try something a little bit different, so that's what I did. This is just a ugly ass rocket, and it doesn't really get me where I want to go. I also have TAC life support, which is that'll definitely constrain the kind of missions that you design. I also have deadly reentry, which makes it a little bit difficult for more intricate rockets, or you have to be more conscious of how you enter the atmosphere, and parts will easily burn off, and if you're not careful, you can burn off your parachutes. You can cause some kind of crazy G-force load on the pilots themselves that can actually kill them without damaging the spacecraft. Most likely it would fall apart anyway, but you can actually kill a Kerbal without destroying the rocket. I've done it a couple times. It's not optimal. There is a mod that I have here. It's actually a structural stability mod, and it works to keep the rockets rigid. But it is not gonna stop the things from exploding. And I've had this issue before I was able to research struts, where the rockets would actually shatter apart, and not like a little break apart. I mean, these were like explosions from a central location. The parts went flying everywhere. The parts that didn't get destroyed in the explosion were flying, and all you'd have left was basically a couple parts at the top that didn't get destroyed, unless the rockets were actually under full power, and then they busted up through the capsule anyway. That happened many times, and I do have that on video, and it took me a while. I finally researched the strut parts, and after I strutted the rockets, it actually stopped happening, or maybe it's just a coincidence, but I haven't had it happen since I started putting struts on the rockets. Now, it does give it a nice stable design with this mod, and you'll notice that the rockets don't flop around when they're flying. That would be the need to, well, that was the reason, is to reduce the amount of struts that you need, but it seems that they're still required in certain circumstances, and maybe I haven't found all the circumstances, but I do believe that it did affect how the rocket exploded without struts. Now, the missions are actually getting a little bit longer, and we're getting a little bit more science. Now this is we at this point we don't have the fuel lines to transfer from tank to tank, so I made these. These are basically just liquid boosters. They'll once they burn out, we'll just drop them and lose that extra weight. But as you can see, the rocket's not flopping around at all, and I attribute that to the mod that I have on there, and I'll have to find the link. Also on my blog, I actually show what the links are, and I'll throw that blog link in the description, and you can see what mods I'm using as well, and it actually links them. It has links to the mods on the forum and on the spaceport, so you can check out those there. This is now I'm finally able to get into an orbit, and using that navigation or that map node navigation control system, which is very handy. It wasn't always there, but now that it is invaluable, and we'll get a nice circular orbit. And as you can see, we're using the orbital engines now. They take up, they have a much higher ISP, but very low thrust, and you won't be able to get out of the atmosphere without with one of these. If you have a light enough craft, you could probably design something that'll go with a couple of them, but most likely you're going to use these pretty much all only in space. And once you get the nuclear rockets, unless you're not going far, usually you're going to use nuclear rockets anyway because the much higher ISP. And once I get into an orbit, I will actually probably circle around the planet, but I'll also do EVAs and gather any science that I haven't yet gathered. Now here I'm going to enter the atmosphere, and we want to keep the capsule. It actually will fly correctly if you just let it, but we want to keep the capsule pointed so the broad side is actually facing the surface. And that way, just like it is now, but that way, that's where the heat shield is. And the Mach 1 pods in Deadly Reentry actually come with those heat shields pre-applied. And if you look on the resources on the right, you'll see ablative shield. And basically what it is it's just a mixture of materials, probably ceramics and other such materials that as you go through the atmosphere and you encounter the friction from the atmosphere, it'll actually heat up, and this shield will kind of ablate or fall away, or be used up, and hopefully you hit the ground, or hopefully you leave the thick part of the atmosphere and slow down enough that the heating stops. Now back to the tree. Actually, you can see here that we've opened up that second research tier. We're going to be jumping on the larger tier here, and what my ultimate goal is actually to get to docking ports as soon as possible, because that opens up a lot of opportunities, and it makes things a little bit easier. You can actually put a refueling station in space, so you don't have to carry up as much fuel, or if your designs are kind of heavy and not efficient, you can still kind of have fun at the game if you can get them to dock with the spaceport. And that's my ultimate goal here. So I'm trying to get to the docking ports as soon as possible, and that's kind of, and I don't remember the exact level of the tiers, but it's maybe the fifth or sixth research fifth or sixth research tier from the first one. So it's going to take a little while, and it takes a couple missions to the moon and Minmus, and then I finally do it. But I don't have Remote Tech installed yet. I do have it in later videos, and that is kind of a pain in the ass because you don't really have too many abilities to get unmanned craft into space if you're using Remote Tech, because the first probe that you get is the Staputnik, and in order to send up a probe and get it into geosynchronous orbit, it's kind of difficult to do it without with an unmanned mission. So what I usually do is I'll make a probe, and then I'll kind of stick it on the backside of a capsule with a Kerbal, get the capsule up, move that into geosynchronous orbit, then detach the probe body with the power and the antennas, and then deorbit that capsule and get the Kerbal back on the ground. That way, you don't have to worry about going in and out of contact with Kerbal Space Command like you would with an unmanned mission. It is possible to do an unmanned mission and set a geosynchronous satellite. It is not impossible. So you can do it. It does take a little bit of patience. You have to fly a little bit differently. You have to your ascent profile is a little bit more flat or vertical. I guess it's less of a I don't know how to explain it, but you kind of have to stay straight more, go vertical, and then by the time you get to the geosynchronous orbit, you're kind of just on the line of Kerbal Space Command getting out of view. So it is very important that you do it correctly, because once you go out of Kerbal Space Command, your capsule is, well, your unmanned pod or unmanned control or whatever you put up there for the unmanned part, well, it won't get the signal from Kerbal Space Command, and then it is a dead stick. So I am now just re-entering atmosphere on another mission, and what I don't like right now is the way those damn goo containers are. They have a tendency to get overheated and explode on reentry with deadly reentry. So I do make a modification later on with the square strut, because then you can put 2 parachutes on it, and then 2 of those goo containers, and they don't get messed up, because a lot of times if you attach things radially to the capsule with deadly reentry, they will explode, overheat and explode on reentry. So it's not the optimal way to do it. And, we're just going through a couple different designs, trying to just garner some points, adding a few extra things to try to get a little bit further out. And I think like the 5th or 6th mission, maybe, we were circling, doing a fly by the moon. And at this point, I kind of reached a plateau that I was going to have to radically redesign my rocket in order to get more points, but I decided to just kind of do a little bit of experimentation here, and I turned this rocket to go towards those mountains, and I was just trying to get to a different biome. This rocket is actually a little bit too hard to control because we don't have the extra reaction wheels from the SAS modules, so it's a little bit sluggish to respond, especially the taller the rocket is or the heavier the rocket is. But we'll get out close to where we need to be. But we will actually get new biome into a new biome, and we'll get some more points from that. But this is just kind of me mucking around here, because I've just reached a plateau that I don't really feel that I can get to the moon at this time, and it's just that I've used up all the space points that are around on these, around space, in space around Kerbin. And so we'll just do a couple stupid things, and then we'll be back on track for space missions. And right where you can see now is I'm actually trying to get towards that docking port. So I think at the very top you see the 2 tech nodes, and if I take the one at the bottom and then one more from the middle and then go over one more, so it's like 2 more research nodes to the right, I'll have docking ports. And now here's what I was explaining a little bit earlier, is that I use that square strut in the center or right underneath the capsule, and then I put the the goo containers and then the radial parachutes, and that will kind of protect them. And also with that Science Junior mod, right underneath that, there's actually a heat shield, a blade of heat shield on the bottom of that. So when we come through, it will protect the Science Junior module from overheating. And when I was explaining with radial mounted items, those batteries will actually probably get burnt up on reentry because they're radially attached to the Science Junior module there. So that's just one thing you kind of got to consider. With deadly reentry, if you run out of power, you got a good amount of time before your Kerbal dies or freezes. Obviously with oxygen, it doesn't take long. With water, it takes a little bit longer. Food, no food, it takes a couple days. But electricity, they'll freeze. So that's within, I think, a couple hours. It's a little bit less than food. I think it's more than oxygen. And we'll just round out our orbits here. Now, I'm not using MechJet. I'm just using my own design here. So some people might say I'm turning too early or turning too late, and that's fine. I don't have a set. I mean, I usually about 6,000 kilometers, or 6,000 meters, I'll start doing my turn, my gravity turn, and then go from there. But by the time I get about 40,000, yeah, about 40 kilometers in the air, then I'll start flattening out my trajectory to try to burn more sideways than vertical, and then that way we can get the orbit started, and we have less work to do. It's just a simple rocket. It's nothing crazy. Do a little bit of science, and then we'll just bring it back down and try it again. This will be the first mission that I've attempted to get a rendezvous with the moon, or hit that transfer window. And with just a little bit of manipulation of the maneuver nodes, I got an encounter, and then at the ascending node I decided to make a final adjustment, and it just uses less fuel to do that. So I wanted to kind of get I wanted to hit the moon just like that. That was a really good encounter with the moon. And then basically I didn't really even have to adjust my altitude from the moon. I just went to the periapsis and started my orbit maneuver. And then we did the science there, and we end up transmitting this because I don't have enough fuel to get back. I believe this could be the mission. I'll have to see. Yes. So this is the mission where I did a bunch of science. I was going to bring it back. My intent was to land it back on Kerbin, and I kind of messed up my deorbital maneuver here to get back to KSP command, and I went the long way. So what happened was I did not have enough life support for this mission, and my Kerbal ended up dying. But just before he died, I was able to transmit all the science that we got. So I mean, it was a reduction in science value, but it was better than losing it. So there was a couple times since I started this career that, and as you can see, that we're running out of supplies. There was a couple times where I was able to transmit before I died, and then there was a couple times that I wasn't able to, and I actually crashed into the planet because I wasn't paying attention. So it happens where you kind of forget your surroundings, and you screw up. And in this case, I didn't think it was going to take more than a day to go to the moon and back, but because I did my return path on the wrong side of the moon, I was able to get the encounter back with Kerbin. And as you can see, that rocket actually entered the atmosphere and crashed, because I had enough fuel to get back. I just went the wrong way, and I didn't have enough life support to keep the Kerbal alive. So that was a stupid mistake. And there's a couple more experimentations that I'm going to do, and one of these rockets was actually made to be a polar lander, and this could be the one. And unfortunately, this is all in post-production. I haven't been able to edit videos at the same time, or actually use the voice on the video so you get the live action, because there's a bunch of stuff going around in my house, and all this is post-production. This is the final rocket of this episode, and it was planned on I was planning to get this into the polar regions. Ended up overshooting it a little bit, just because I didn't think I was going to make it, and then I came in flat, and it didn't slow me down as much as I thought it was going to, so I overshot the pole, but I was able to get into a new biome anyway, so I got science points for it. But this will be the summation of this video, and most of this stuff, other than the trip to the moon, has been all Kerbal or all stuff on the planet, Kerbal. And we will expand our horizons into the moon, more on the moon, and then Minmus as well. And by the end of what I've got going on right now, so it's probably about 3 more videos of footage, then I will actually have the docking port, and I will start docking. And that's using Navy Fish's docking alignment tool, which is a must-have. It's awesome. It'll really, especially, it makes people that know how to dock quicker, and it makes people that don't really understand or don't know how to dock, it makes it easier for them. And then they become pros, and that's what we all want to be, pros at Kerbal Space Program. So with that, we'll just see my final tally on science points so far. Once we get out and do a few other science-y things. And this is what I have opened up. I want to get into a little bit more science, and then we will just continue on towards that docking port path. But right now we're looking pretty good. I think a couple of missions to Minmus and a couple of missions to the moon will actually open that wide open. So please check back for future videos, and like, subscribe, comment, check out my other ones. And if there's anything you want to see, hit me up, let me know, and I will talk to you later. So fly safe-ish.